Rand, thank you so much for being on the show. You're always so generous with your time, and I really appreciate it. You've been on a couple of these podcasts that I've had over the years, and really appreciate it. In fact, when I told my co-founders that you were going to be on the podcast, they had like a Elvis Presley like moment. They're like, "Oh my God, Rand Fishkin!" Everybody actually like you actually made me look really good because people were like, "How do you get Rand on your show?" I'm like, "I don't know. He's just been
hey, we're old buddies, you know. We gotta no, Jorge. I'm always thrilled to join you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I wanted to dive in real quick into a non-go-to-market marketing, sales sort of question, and it was really this idea of the different approaches that folks can take out there when incorporating their company, right? And I know you looked at a couple and you've done a couple different versions. I know SparkToro's an LLC, and there were some reasons behind that.
Yep.
And Moz was, traditional C Corp. And then now you have a new venture that you're looking to potentially use a different format. If you can take us through some of the thinking there around your approach.
Yeah. So generally speaking, I would talk to your tax professional. They're going to give you great advice, but broadly speaking, there's what's called like pass-through entities and non-pass-through entities. So let's say when revenue came into Moz, right? So Moz was doing, I don't know, $50 million a year in revenue or whatever. And my salary at Moz, which was like $190,000 when I was, after I had stepped down from the CEO role, that money was taxed twice. It was taxed both when the company, the corporation, made the money, and then I also paid taxes on it. So that sort of double taxation thing, you might go, that's a real bummer. Is there a way to get around that? An LLC or a solo company, like those are ways that you can get around that. Essentially, when money comes into SparkToro, it is taxed once, just the taxes on the LLC itself. And then when Casey and I, my co-founder, and I pay ourselves, that money is considered a distribution from the profits. And we could choose to make the distribution a larger or smaller amount. And we've fluctuated it over the years. But so that's a very nice feature. If you, as the founder creator of your company, are going to be the both sort of primary shareholder, and you're going to be collecting, money from the revenue and profits to pay yourself and keeping it generally smaller, yeah, an LLC is a great way to go. If you are planning on not taking a salary, for example, so Snackbar Studio, right? My indie video game studio, which is sort of in the process of getting up to speed now. But that company has 5 founders, 3 of whom three of our co-founders are in Europe. They will be paid salaries, and Geraldine and I, who are 2 of the other founders and will own quite a bit of the studio, we are not getting paid salaries. C Corp actually makes more sense for us based on how we're going to do future distributions and dividend payments. The fact that M&A is a likely eventual outcome, those types of things. So, like I said, talk to your tax professional. You can read up on it, but those were the reasons that we chose to go the path that we did.
I was going to ask you whether you take institutional capital or bootstrap, these sort of things, what your outcome or desired outcome is.
Institutional capital tends to hate everything that's not a C Corp for a variety of reasons. Some of them around taxes, some of them around structure, some around M&A opportunities. The one thing I'd say is, if you make an LLC, transitioning to a C Corp is not a big deal. We did it at Moz. It was fine. So I just caution people against thinking like, oh my God, I'll make the wrong decision. That's okay. Yeah. You can make another decision in the future, right? It just costs you paperwork and time and some, lawyer money. With both Snackbar Studio and SparkToro raised no money from institutional only from individual angel investors. So people like you and I, right, putting in, you know, $25,000 or $50,000, and the structure, the unique structure that we have is sort of that money needs to get paid back before any dividends can be made, including to the founders. At SparkToro, Casey and I had our salaries capped until we repaid our investors. Now we have another cap that's sort of 2x the old number. And then anything more that we want to make, we have to pay dividends to everyone pro rata. Snackbar is the same way, except Geraldine and I make nothing from the company until it pays its investors back and makes distributions. And so our incentive, obviously, is to make a long-term, profitable, surviving company rather than in the venture capital world, which is what institutional investors go after, that kind of growth at all costs or die trying model, where you get a few hits and a ton of losses. I like sure things. So, you know, I'm a surprisingly risk averse entrepreneur. And so I like these models that are less dependent on, you know, how you're going to be a billion-dollar company. And instead, can you build something profitable that lasts for a long time? And I think I can.
Yeah. Well, you've proven that as well. And I know that you've bootstrapped SparkToro specifically now, and I've just been like amazed at the brand and what you've been able to do. If you were to give advice to folks out there who want to start a company and perhaps bootstrap the venture in B2B SaaS here today in 2024, and we have the limited resources, let's just assume that they don't have a trust fund or you know, a bunch of money in the bank. What go-to-market plays would you recommend on focusing on, and why early on?
Yeah. So just to be clear, I did not bootstrap. Well, it depends. If you use the term bootstrap to mean you raised no capital of any kind, you didn't get any loans, you didn't get any help, you just, you know, you funded it with your own time and maybe your own money, but usually means not that either. SparkToro is not bootstrapped. We raised $1.3 million from 35 angel investors. It was not venture capital, but that money is what allowed us to spend the first 18 months of SparkToro's lifespan essentially building up two things. One, building up the audience, and two, building up the product. So while Casey was busy sort of engineering, getting all the data, building the product, we were testing that with people and iterating and getting feedback and all those kinds of things. And I was out there basically, you know, blogging and speaking at events and going on podcasts and talking to people about the problem that we would eventually solve. And that process is what built up sort of our email list of, I think at launch, it was around 25,000 people who over the previous 2 years had said, yeah, I want to be notified when SparkToro launches. And I can't recommend this enough. So the first thing I would do, if whether you're bootstrapping or you're early stage, you're raising money, you're not raising money, doesn't matter. I would do what SparkToro and obviously Snackbar Studio is going to do the same thing, right? Eventually, when there's about a year to go until launch, that video game will have a page, you know, on Steam. It'll have a website where you can sign up for an email list or sign up to add it to your wish list. And that momentum that carries into the launch is absolutely huge. Those are the same people that you get to market to over time as you add new features and build things and, you know, make it interesting for them. And even during the build process, that was the same list I used to get feedback from people, right? I emailed that list and said, hey, do you want to be part of the private beta? Would you be willing to test with us? You know, all those kinds of things. So the power of email marketing is just incredible. I would urge you to do that. If you can get data about the people who are adding themselves to your list too, by, you know, either by making it easy initially, but then emailing them again and saying like, hey, would you sort of fill this out to get, you know, move up on the list or whatever it is. I think that is a great way to go.
Question about audience building early on, especially when perhaps you haven't really nailed product market fit, or you don't have a lot of signals.
You don't have a product.
Yeah, you don't have a product, right? And yeah, good point. You don't have a product, and you might say, okay, this is like marketing oriented content. But when you don't quite know, is it top of the funnel? Is it middle? When there is no middle or bottom of the funnel because you don't even know yet, how do you start to sort of formulate a strategy that will then build an audience that will be valuable for you longer term and could potentially turn into customers?
Yeah. So when you are when you're starting out, Jorge, you have a couple of things that should dictate this process and these parameters, and that is the problem that you are solving. Your product may not be fully baked yet. You don't know exactly what it is, but you know that the product is solving this particular problem. You know, in the video game space, we're solving the problem of people who like these kinds of games, and they tend to have these types of demographics, and they tend to have enjoyed these other similar games before. So the problem is, give me a new game that is like the game that I love, have loved in the past. With SparkToro, it was, show me the sources of influence that my audience is paying attention to so that I can market to them more effectively. And that outside of just Google and Facebook. That promise, right? The promise of solving that problem is what got people excited. And no matter what you're building, whether it's, hey, I'm making a new restaurant, or I am launching a cookbook, or I am creating a new kind of bar cabinet, or I'm doing software for interior designers in California who have large-scale corporate projects. Whatever it is, it's, the problem space, and therefore the audience. And your job is to market the problem and your promise of a solution to the audience. And then that is what will earn you that group of people who are passionate and care about it. I would actually say this is going to be mildly controversial. It is easier, in my opinion, because it feels less selfish. It is easier to go stand on a stage, go on a podcast, go, write blog posts, post social media updates, and say, I don't have anything you can buy, but I want to tell you about this problem that we're going to solve. And if you're interested in solving it, you should come join our wait list. Actually, a lot of people find that message sort of more compelling. They're like more willing to do that than, hey, come buy my product. It feels more, I don't know, acceptable. and so it spreads faster.
So I had a question regarding AI's role in this SEO world, right? I know you are one of the experts on planet Earth around this. How do you, and I know you've been talking a little bit about this online, but how do you see the role of AI in SEO? And will search change? I mean, I have a hard time believing that it's going to go away in the way that it has been, operating, certainly the last several years. But what's your take on this?
Well, let's see. It depends on which side of the equation you're asking. If it's sort of like, how will Google and other search engines use AI to make their results different? I think Google's AI overviews, which kind of had a rocky rollout and then a big rollback, are a good example of how search engines might eventually try to do that. Which is to say, they will collect data from across the internet, right? And then large language models are word predictors, token predictors, right? So they predict words that come after other words very frequently. And this is how they mimic sort of an intelligent response that sounds credible to someone. Of course, the problem with sounds credible and is credible is what Google discovered when they rolled out AI overviews. And that is that, if you are right 99 times and dead wrong in a laughable way 1 out of 100 times, every searcher still needs to disbelieve every result until proven otherwise. That's a big hurdle to cross, right? So, even if the answer was 999 times out of 1,000, you'd still wonder every time you searched, is that correct? I'm not sure I can trust it. And sure, I can trust the data is a core part of how search engines work. And so I think there's going to be a long, painful period where they try and figure out, when is it appropriate to show an answer that might be wrong, or might give misinformation. I don't know where that ends up. If we're talking about the other side of the equation, how do marketers potentially use AI in their content marketing or their SEO. I would say in the process, wherever you find it useful for your personal purposes, great. In the actual content that you produce, I would stay far away from it. And that is because neither human beings nor search engines resonate with AI created content. You might have noticed that when like AI generated images first came out, there was an explosion in their use. And now whenever anyone sees them, they go, oh, that looks cheap and dumb. It removes credibility rather than creating any value. The same thing is true with AI generated content. When it first came out, people are like, wow, this sounds like a real person wrote this. And now we all kind of look at, an email, or we look at content on the web and we're like, wait a minute, this is mimicry. This is not anything authentic. This is not anything worth reading. And, I point to it this way. Never have I seen an AI written article upvoted highly on Reddit or Hacker News. Never have I seen it on top of Tech Meme. Never have I seen it get hundreds of thousands of shares on LinkedIn or Threads or, well, Twitter is a different case, but I think Twitter is mostly bots. So, it's just it's not there. And I don't think, unlike a lot of other prognosticators, I don't think it is not there yet. I think it is not going to serve as a substitute. The current way that AI generation works, of using token predictors, I don't believe that will get us to a place of, oh, I want to read and engage with, or see these visuals, or watch this movie that was created by AI. With the tiniest few exceptions, I just don't see it. But lots of places to use it in your process.
I also spoke to someone recently who was saying that we should really approach AI, at least right now, in a more AI assisted workflow,
Right.
as opposed to,
yeah, great.
Right.
Yeah,
and that really speaks to it.
I think of it like spreadsheets in 1985. Great for doing your work faster or more efficiently, or solving a problem that would have been 100 engineers with 10,000 slide rules and a ton of graph paper, a few years before that. Wonderful. I think that's smart as heck. Please, by all means, use AI in your processes to solve your problems more accurately and faster than you could have on your own. Great. Taking the output that they produce and publishing that uncritically and directly, don't do it. It's not working.
Well, I think also there is this thing that I've seen. I'm somewhat in the CMS type space, right? So you could argue that that's a related space, or the underpinnings. In any case, one thing that I've observed with the generative AI systems out there, and I won't name any names, is that it'll put something together, but then you spend double the time that you would have before cleaning it up, right? Yep. And so it's like, so there's got to be something, because there is some value to having this assistant. I think we still have to figure out, what does it actually mean in reality?
I mean, when I see people using it to write literal content or create images or video or GIFs or whatever, I'm very skeptical. When I see people who use it to generate an outline and then build off that outline and then write it themselves, great. I think it's fine for that. When I see people using it, I use it for this quite often, which is categorizing data, or taking fuzzy data like blobs of text and telling me what that thing is about. We use it a little bit in SparkToro for query refinement or expansion. So, right, somebody types in, hey, I'm curious, I want to learn about people whose bio includes dental practices. And then we look for the words dental practices and we realize, gosh, we only have a few hundred profiles with that. Oh, actually, dental practices are owned by dentists. And we can see that by making a call to ChatGPT. Great. We're going to also include profiles of dentists in the dental practices search query. Great. Like that is a useful way to make software that delivers better results. And I think it's a fine use case. But if you're going much beyond that into the creation production side, I worry.
I was gonna go down an esoteric rabbit hole around it. Doesn't this mean that we want to be more human? That we have this thirst for
When
being more
when
human?
when in the time of humanity have people thought, "God, this is just too authentic and real for me. I want something more fake and that sounds generic and like a robot did it." I never have I heard that. Like that's not a demand that people have, right? When they read ad copy or they watch television and they think to themselves, "Geez, I wish these actors were more wooden."
Totally, and I think that's in line too with a lot of the advancements that we've seen in the way that we work. Like people are hungry for in-person events recently because we went through this period where we didn't have, but before that, people were banging the table going, I need to work from home. I need to work from home. So it's just funny, right? The human
Yeah,
condition.
yeah. And I think that both those things make a lot of sense together to me, right? I want to work from home and I want events, which is optional for me to attend and a chance for me to get to know people, not just that I work with. Those make great sense to me. I think that the same thing can be true in sort of the AI world, which is I want tools to make my work more efficient and more effective to help me with all the things that technology has always helped me with spelling, grammar, format, style, blind spots. Tell me about concepts that maybe my piece didn't discuss that I probably should have addressed, or I'm going to submit this paragraph of information to you, ChatGPT, and I want you to tell me what's wrong with it, or how would you argue against this, and then maybe I can use those as things that I'll make my additional points against. Fine, great, all of those use cases, wonderful. But I think, unfortunately, what happened is a lot of people thought that they could just replace human beings' work directly with AI-generated outputs, and that's not what they're for. And I do blame a lot of the owners of these products because I think that's how they marketed it.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to switch gears quickly to some key learnings, perhaps, that you've been able to implement when building SparkToro that you learned from your Moz days. Anything that really, and I know that's a big question, right? We
Yeah.
could probably go down a lot of different approaches, or topics, but anything that really kind of stands out that you think, you know what, this is a key learning. And for the folks listening, if you listen to this and maybe adapt it to what you're doing, this is going to move the needle.
Yeah. One thing, well, the structure is the big one, right? So Moz was venture backed, which I now think in retrospect was a big mistake and probably led it down the wrong path. And I think also that Moz attempted at the sort of peak of its, I would say, perception and its dominance of its one field, right? At one point, Moz was the most popular SEO software in the world by a nice margin, and then quickly lost that lead because the company at the executive, myself included, right? I am the architect of the demise. And the board level believed that the SEO software space was too small, and therefore we had to go broad and be all things to all people. That really sunk the company. I would argue that a corollary to Moz would have been something like HubSpot, which focused very exclusively on being a marketing CRM for its particular type of agency and mid-market business customers. And they made that their bread and butter for a very long time before, I think they were a public company before they tried to go after salespeople, right? And that, at that point they had billions of dollars in reserve and a massive, marketing function, huge team, a lot of room for failure. And Moz did not. So one of the things I would tell people to do very much is focus. Pick a niche as small as you can. Make sure that you do the best job that you possibly can for that particular group of people before you try and move on to something else. You don't have to pick big markets unless you're trying to get VC capital. You don't have to pick $1 billion market. Pick $100 million market. Pick a $20 million market. What's beautiful about those is almost no one else of any scale is going to care about them. They're not going to go after them, which leaves you free. You know, no one is in the audience research software space. Like, it's just the market is wide open for SparkToro. It's hard to even name a competitor that's very direct. Now, granted, it's not a very big market, right? SparkToro is like 1.5 million ARR around there. So, you know, maybe someday it'll be a 10 million or $50 million market. Maybe we'll be a bunch of that. Maybe somebody else will. But regardless, I think what's great is we're a team of 3 people. We're very focused on solving this problem. I think if we nail it, it'll be a big market someday. But we intentionally did not go after a market that tons of other people were pursuing.
Rand, thank you so much for being on the show again. If folks want to learn more about SparkToro or any of your other ventures and or connect with you, learn from you, what are the best channels or URLs to reach you?
Yeah, I'm most active on Threads and LinkedIn. So you can look me up, Rand Fishkin, at either of those. And of course, if folks want to try SparkToro, it's just sparktoro.com. It's free. We don't have a free trial. There's no credit card. It's just free to try.
Awesome. Well, have a wonderful day, and thank you so much again.
Yeah, my pleasure, Jorge. Thanks for having me.